Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Nice to meet you again.
Good to see you. So it's just a small group today. As we say in Italy, pochi ma buoni. That means few but good. So we will have a very nice, intimate meeting today. We decided to have a meeting instead of skipping, although we had not really prepared a topic of the, say, usual style, more on the psychological side. But we thought it would be good to put together the experience that we've had in the last few days and the topic of self-observation and self-knowledge, because somehow it lent itself to an interesting association, and we thought it would be good to have a more of an open-ended conversation today, and starting from a bit of the story. So what happened to us last week? We have been interested for a long time in the topic of eco-villages, because they somehow allow us to respond to that call from nature. Or in other words, the need that we feel to be closer to nature, and we are exploring ways to make that happen. So we thought that this was a good opportunity, because there is a 4-day course which is run periodically at this particular eco-village in Wales. It's called Lammas, and it's been there for about 10 years now, so it's pretty well known. It hosts a small number of families, each of them basically independent. And having gathered a good amount of experience of good success and mistakes from which they've learned, periodically they share this with a group of newbies or prospect eco-villagers, if they can be called like that. So this time we have enrolled, and we were part of this classroom, which was entertained in a very interesting way by several of the dwellers of this eco-village, which has been created in the middle of the countryside, in a place where there used to be just pasture and woodland. Thanks to a particular legislation that we discovered is possibly unique in the Western world. It's called One Planet Development, and it was created in Wales about 10 or 12 years ago, based on the vision of a lady, a politician in charge of the environment. So what this legislation allows is to create a settlement or a homestead in the middle of nature, which may be set up even if the land itself is of rural type, which means that if you comply with certain rules, for example, that your homestead is sustainable, has a very very good or small carbon footprint, if you generate at least a certain amount of income from the land, then you are granted a license to create your own dwelling or to live in a temporary accommodation that is called technically a caravan. And so you may approach life in the countryside without paying the huge amount of money, which is normally the price of a plot of land where you can build. That makes it attractive for those who really are able and willing to deal with nature from close distance, because you really have to cultivate, to grow something, and make good use of your, let's say, time spent there, in the sense that you need to sustain yourself at least partially through the products of your cultures. It's a small amount, really. You only have to make about £2,500 a year, either through direct produce, like producing carrots, or byproducts of this, for example, carrot cakes, as they normally say, to quote an example. We have therefore met pretty interesting people who have spent years in settling. They arrived on a green field, and they've turned them into, well, quite a varied landscape. They call it the edible garden, if I remember well. That means, or edible forest. That is a set of plants they've grown, which are not always, or usually not looking like industrialized agriculture, but more of a, let's say, more interesting landscape of plants living together and helping one another according to the principles of permaculture. Permaculture, you may have come across already, but is an approach to agriculture where you make plants cooperate and you try to work along with nature instead of against nature. Against nature means, for example, that you want a crop of just corn for a whole acre or 100 acres. And in order to get that corn, you systematically destroy everything else. While the permaculture approach is more that if you want corn and it has problems with weeds, for example, you put another plant next to it, which prevents the weeds from growing, or if it needs more of a chemical substance, you put a plant next to it which fixes that substance from the air and injects that into the soil. So creating a collaboration between plants to not have to rely on chemicals. Okay, so we have seen a lot of interesting solutions, a lot of intriguing constructions, green houses built there with an incredible amount of effort and ingenuity. Sometimes we thought that was too much of an effort to get a house up, but for some of them it literally took years to build a house, but they did it themselves, so quite a satisfaction. Where does this meet the topic of self knowledge and inner regeneration? I think we can look at that in a few minutes, but maybe before we get into that point, I'd like to shift down the gear and do together a little practice to relax and to enter our own garden, so to speak. So after this brief introduction, if you would like, let's now take a relaxed and a comfortable position. As always, close your eyes if you wish. I'll stop the video for myself as well. And let's start feeling our body. We are observing from the inside. Let's become conscious of our breathing. of the position of our body. Let's feel if there is any tension. And most of all, let's feel the observer looking at the body. Let's now turn our look towards our chest, our solar plexus. Let's see what's going on, if there are emotions moving around. And let's feel the observer in its action of looking. Let us now look inside our mind, keeping the observer active and feeling it. We are now looking at thoughts and ideas. So while feeling our essence looking through the pineal gland, we are aware of our thoughts, we are aware of our feelings, we are aware of our body. Starting from this condition of awareness, let us now move into the jungle. Our little imagination exercise. We have been taken by a helicopter into the jungle, onto a rocky basement. The helicopter has left us and we are now by ourselves on this rock, and all around us there is only jungle. Take some time to look around. Feel what the jungle is telling you as sounds, as images, as smells, anything. You just look around and allow yourself to feel. You are free to move out of the rock and go walk, explore the jungle. And once you have explored enough, go back onto the rock plane. that is a safe space. Okay, now when you feel ready, just move a little bit to regain contact with the outside reality. Open your eyes. And come back to our meeting. We shall then have the opportunity to share anything that we would like to. So, restarting from where we left off, what is the relationship between living in nature and our inner development? In no particular order, I'd like to just express a few ideas for you to consider. First of all, there is sometimes a misconception that a high degree of culture and intellect and school may help us to develop our interior side. Well, this is normally proved wrong by experience. And in fact, it is more likely that somebody who has lived away from schools and close to nature will be more open to inner development. And this is because this person is less likely to have lots of programs in their minds and fewer preconceived ideas that will get in the way, just egos under a different name. So being close to nature rather than an obstacle is most probably an advantage in looking for our inner development. Culture itself may be an advantage only when it leads us to a better understanding of what's happening. But there is also the risk that culture may hijack our efforts and drag them into a sterile amount of thinking, which will then make no positive effect on our development. A lot of conceptualization, a lot of overthinking, really, and substituting an inordinate amount of words for actual practice. When I say practice, by now you know what I mean. That is a proper presence and observation of our inner nature. Again, the word nature. So that was one first idea. In order to balance that, let me just offer sort of a alternate view. That is the fact that one lives at the hustle and bustle of the city and goes and live in Tipi Valley or any place which is just nature, by itself doesn't guarantee any spiritual development either. One might think that inner development equals going against the structure of society and the rules of society. Well, in fact, going against or going in favor by itself is exactly the same as far as inner development. It's a bit like the child in a family, whether she follows exactly the rules or is always opposing the rules. Both of these approaches are mechanical. So neither one will guarantee any development whatsoever. It will just lead into two different types of personality. So the compulsive obedient and the compulsive rebel, neither one is closer to any spiritual development just because of that. So a healthy degree of rebellion is of course useful, but being a rebel just because doesn't take you anywhere. Basically, the day you meet something really valuable, really precious, or say a person that can really help you, you will go against that as well because it has become a mechanical habit. So 1 point in favor, 1 point against. Am I saying that it's really immaterial whether we approach nature and try to live closer to nature in our lives? Absolutely not. So I'm just assuming the particular point of view of my personal view on spiritual development. But if I put that aside for a moment, of course, there are great advantages in approaching nature. And I think it's almost pointless to try and list them all. First of all, because we are part of nature. And you can feel a very high vibration if you go to a place like a wood, a forest, or next to the ocean. So it doesn't take a lot of explanation to understand why nature has a lot to offer to us in terms of our health, our well-being. We are back. Sorry for the interruption. Zoom is misbehaving. Okay, so let's stop now our recorded part and continue with our exchange.